Hi, I'm Steph, and today I want to talk about Weird Al Yankovic. He's all over the place right now. So I was a kid in the late 70s and the early 80s, and then my teen years were the mid to late 80s, and I graduated high school in 1990. So I'm your basic straight down the middle Gen Xer, and Weird Al is one of my favorite musicians of all time. I didn't really get to listen to the Dr. Demento show as much as I would have liked when I was growing up. Where I lived, it was on, I think, on Sunday nights at like 9 o'clock. And of course, that being a school night, my dad wanted us to be in bed by 10. So I didn't always get to hear the second hour. And some nights I didn't get to hear any of the show. So I primarily learned his music from like MTV and from buying the tapes and then later the CDs when I could get them. But I have been a big Weird Al fan for a long, long time. Sadly, I've never seen him in concert. But I've listened to pretty much all of his music catalog over the years. And I have like a Spotify playlist of my favorites of his songs. I also love his first movie, UHF, which I own. That's how much we love it. My favorite album of his is Running with Scissors, which I think is just has some genius songs on it. As much as I enjoy his parodies, I think he really shines in his original numbers. Running with Scissors has a handful of original songs that really stand out, particularly Your Horoscope for Today and Albuquerque. So if you haven't heard that album, I really recommend it. I consider Weird Al Yankovic to be like a national treasure. He's genuinely a good, kind person. I think of him in the same category as like Mr. Rogers and Bob Ross and Steve Irwin. He just has a good heart, and he's a really good example of how to live your life. He doesn't even cuss. I watched a bit of his interview with Howard Stern in the last couple weeks, and he just said he just has never used foul language, has never felt like he needed to use it, and I think that's pretty cool. As for his personal life, I'm not going to go into like a full biography here. He was raised in California. He was an only child. His parents were supportive and loving. And he has a wife and a daughter. So, of course, today I'm going to talk about the new movie starring Daniel Radcliffe as Weird Al Yankovic, which is called Weird, the Al Yankovic Story. And this is basically a parody of biopics and of Al's life story. Before you get upset about spoilers, two things. If you've seen the Funny or Die sketch that inspired the film starring Aaron Paul as Weird Al, then you've seen most of what happens in the movie, just in a much shorter, condensed version. And second, Al himself spoiled the end of the movie the other day on Twitter and Facebook. So I feel like if he's okay with spoilers, then so am I. And speaking of the Funny or Die sketch, apparently Aaron Paul was supposed to have a cameo in the new movie, but like the day that he showed up to film his cameo, he tested positive for COVID and he was sidelined. So that's like really unfortunate, and I wish that they had been able to make some kind of accommodation for him or find another way for him to appear in the movie, but it wasn't going to happen, so he's not in it, unfortunately. So the Weird movie opens with Daniel Radcliffe as Weird Al being rushed into the hospital where he like dies on the table, but then he gasps back to life. And then you have your typical biopic dramatic voiceover. In this case, the voiceover is performed by Diedrich Bader, and he does the old, let's go back to the beginning. And we flash to a young Al being berated by his parents, first for secretly listening to Dr. Demento, and later for his desire to make up words to songs that already exist. So, as you've probably seen in the trailer, his mother even says to him, I know it's hard to hear this, but your dad and I had a long talk, and we agreed it would be best for all of us if you would just stop being who you are and doing the things you love, which is hysterical. So in the movie, Al's father works in a factory, and he expects his son to just grow up and work there also, but Al just wants to make music. Fortune intervenes when a salesman drops by, played by Thomas Lennon, and he introduces Al to the accordion. Al's father like beats up the salesman and then leaves the room, and his mother says she'll buy the accordion for him, but he has to keep it a secret from his father. So there's a jump forward in time, and an adolescent Al is invited out to a party where kids are wearing lederhosen and playing polka music, and he's like pressured into playing the accordion, which he does incredibly well, and of course impresses everyone. The cops show up to bust the party, and Al is taken home in disgrace. And his father finds the Hey Boy decoy that was left in his bed, which is basically like a boy made out of hay that was posing as Al in his bed so his parents wouldn't know he was gone. And then his father, in a fury, destroys the accordion, and Al leaves home as soon as he can. So in probably what I think are the funniest scenes in the film, when Al is in college, his roommates encourage him to follow the dream of making up words to songs that exist. He's a little bit resistant at first because he's like, you know, maybe I've outgrown this, maybe the passion has faded. And then they have this great scene. I think some of this scene is in the trailer. He goes to the fridge to make sandwiches for everybody. And he's like, oh, to one of his roommates, your name is on this bologna. And his roommate says, it's fine. Open up a package of my bologna. And I just about died laughing because those, of course, are lyrics from Weird Al's song. So inspiration hits, and he makes up this song on the spot. And his roommates encourage him to record the song and send it into a local DJ. And so he does. They go to a bathroom on campus to record the song, which I guess is what really happened in real life. So that's kind of funny. And he sends the tape to the local radio jockey. So as his roommates are sitting there telling him, you know, you probably won't get famous overnight. That just doesn't happen. Moments later, they turn on the radio to hear My Bologna playing, and it's a huge hit. And of course, he's an overnight sensation in the film. So I think that the first third of the film is just hysterical, as Al is inspired to write these songs in funny situations. He plays at a biker bar where Dr. Demento inexplicably is hanging out, and he's played by Rainn Wilson. His friends jump up on the stage to play with him. One plays the drums, one plays the bass, one plays the guitar, and his band is born. And every time they have Radcliffe do this like intense moment of inspiration as a song comes to him, it just made me laugh so hard. It's really hilarious to think of him coming up with these songs on the spot. Obviously, we know that's not how it happened in real life. In fact, I read an interview a couple of years ago with Weird Al when he was talking about having pages and pages of rhyming words and like agonizing over which words to choose. But that's the point of parody. And this whole film is a parody. So it takes the truth and just turns it on its head. In spite of his growing popularity, when Al approaches record producer Tony Scotti, who's played by Weird Al, and his brother Ben, played by Will Forte, they reject him. Forte shouts him down about how ridiculous his music is and how no one will ever want to listen to this. And I think he even says something like, why would we listen to the wrong words of the song when we can listen to the right words for free, or something like that. So Dr. Demento invites him to a party, and he becomes his mentor. And at the party, there are all of these famous actors playing 1980s icons, including Jack Black as Wolfman Jack, Demetri Martin as Tiny Tim, Conan O'Brien plays Andy Warhol, Paul F. Tompkins is Gallagher, David Dastmalchian plays Queen bassist John Deacon, and there are many, many others. I'm not going to name them all here. So Al skyrockets to fame and wealth. And at one point he's in his mansion and he calls his mother on the phone, and his mother tells him that his father is still disappointed in him, which just crushes his hopes for reconciliation. So after he tells Dr. Demento about this big disappointment, Demento gives him guacamole that's laced with acid. And he has this weird hallucinatory experience which inspires him to write the song Eat It. And the movie claims that Eat It is a totally original song and not a parody. And then he signs a record deal with the Scotti brothers, and he says he's done making parody songs. So of course, eventually the song Beat It comes out, and he freaks out because Michael Jackson is ripping off his song. It's hilarious. And he's like, who would do that? So one day, Madonna, played by Evan Rachel Wood, shows up at his mansion, and she seduces him pretty much immediately. And he becomes sort of obsessed with her and with their relationship. He goes a little bit like ego crazy. He starts drinking. He's abusive to Dr. Demento when he tries to warn him that Madonna is using him. He's horrible to his bandmates. He shows up late to a concert. Madonna really wants him to do a parody of one of her songs, but he keeps insisting he's done with parodies. And so she is secretly using him to take advantage of the Yankovic bump, which was a reality. Often after Weird Al parodied a song, the original artist of the song would see a spike in record sales. So that's kind of a funny little thing. So one of Al's biggest fans in the movie happens to be drug kingpin Pablo Escobar. And he sends some men to kidnap Madonna so that Al will show up at his place for his birthday. So this begins like an action movie sequence in the film. So Al defeats bad guy after bad guy, beats up a bunch of guys in a diner after the kidnapping, and then ultimately he heads into the jungle to find Escobar and rescue Madonna. And he's even wearing like a camouflage Hawaiian shirt. It's great. So he ultimately shoots Escobar's men at the compound, and then he kills Escobar. And then Madonna, in a little twist, proposes that they stay there and take over the drug empire, with her in charge and Al as her second. And he refuses. He starts to realize that Dr. Demento was right and she's just using him. So she shoots at him really badly as he leaves, and he just goes back to the States. So for whatever reason, he returns home and decides to work at the factory with his father for a little while. And for a minute, I thought maybe they would go down the route that like Zoolander did when he went to work in the mines with his dad and brothers, but it doesn't go there. His father instead tells him that he's actually really proud of his accomplishments and that he shouldn't be at the factory. He should be making music. And then, so they reconcile and they have these nice moments. And his father shares with him that he was raised Amish, and that he even tried writing song lyrics himself, which, eventually, ultimately inspires the song Amish Paradise. So Al's career peaks. He wins an award, and following his speech, this is like the climax end of the movie. So following his speech, one of Madonna's drug empire henchmen shoots him dead before he leaves the stage. And that's what Weird Al had spoiled on Twitter with the picture of his gravestone. So while a lot of the movie has a lot of laughs, I do think the first third was the funniest part. But if you watch a lot of Hollywood biopics, I think you'll find a lot to laugh at throughout the whole movie. This is like the ultimate lampoon of self-important glossy biopics. And I love that instead of a serious biography, this movie represents basically what Weird Al's career was built on. It is parody. It's a silly, flipped upside down way of looking at his life. It's not a perfect movie, but it's clean. The sexual stuff is all referenced, nothing's shown. And it's very, very funny. I will probably go back and watch it again. I enjoyed it that much. Weird Al said in an interview that Daniel Radcliffe was his first choice to play him. And of course, Radcliffe doesn't physically resemble Yankovic in any way. But that just makes the casting even more perfect for a movie that's a parody. And although Daniel Radcliffe can sing, they went with dubbing the singing by Weird Al when Radcliffe was on stage and singing his songs. And I think that was a good choice. I know there were probably people who would have liked to hear Daniel Radcliffe sing the songs, but I feel like this is such a silly movie. It hardly matters that you've got one voice narrating the film, Daniel Radcliffe's speaking voice, and then the singing voice, and they don't match up. I think that's totally fine in a movie this goofy. And this film is like peak silly. It's weird. And it's an excellent showcase for Weird Al's sense of humor about life and about himself and about his career. So this movie is exclusively available on Roku. And not everybody has Roku. And this is what Al said about watching the movie when somebody from Australia asked him on Twitter how they could access the movie. This is a pretty funny quote. He says, "Roku's working on it. In the meantime, there's VPN, very probably no, way to watch it legally. I'm sure you have a torrent of other questions, but I have to move along. Sorry." So that's pretty funny. A little wink wink to those who know how to access things that you can't really get. So I'm not advocating piracy. I'm just passing along what he told a fan on Twitter. So if you're a Weird Al fan, and why wouldn't you be, you should watch this movie and laugh your head off. If Roku ever decides to sell it on DVD, I'll probably buy it so I can have the whole set of 2 movies that Weird Al has made. So anyway, those are my thoughts. Tell me in the comments what you think of Weird, the Al Yankovic story. And thanks for watching. It means a lot to me. I appreciate it if you will click like, maybe leave a comment, share, maybe subscribe to my channel, all of those YouTube-y things. Thanks.